Welcome, everybody. I'm Chad Koulis, Executive Director of the Midway Chamber of Commerce. And this is an event we do every year, our legislative panel. Normally, we do it in a room full of people around this time of year, either in January or February. And we would have not been able to guess back last February when we had David Schultz, the Hamlin professor, speak to us after our panel, talking about the upcoming election and what to expect. Little did we know this is what we would have to come to expect. But we're making do with it. We're over 10 months into this, and I know we're all somewhat pros at doing the virtual meetings now. So thank you for joining us. At this time, I want to turn things over to our board chair, Jamison Randall. Jamison.
Hello, everybody. Jamison Randall here, Midway Chamber Board Chair, coming to you straight from sunny St. Paul in the Midway neighborhood. Look at the sun is shining. Everybody's smiling. We're all happy here in St. Paul. So thanks again for attending. It's, folks like you that are joining us today that really help this chamber keep going. So thank you to those who do support us with your donations. And it really means a lot to be able to continue what we're doing and helping the Midway become a strong, great place to live, work, and play. So we do have some amazing guests here today. I would like to recognize also our sponsors, Sunrise Banks. They are our education series sponsor. So thank you to Sunrise Banks for all your support. We also have our main sponsor is Josh Hisley with Allianz. They are going to be here as our headline sponsor, and I'd like to introduce Josh Hisley just to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jamison. Sorry for I keep bobbing in and out. I know someone talked about how we have this all figured out by now. I guess I'm the outlier to that, but yeah, I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say. It's good. It is good to see everyone. I work in the government relations area at Allianz, and so I've been able to. It's been interesting for me to be able to work with Chad somewhat and other folks in St. Paul. I have a lot of enthusiasm for the Midway in particular. I actually, if you'll indulge me for just a minute, I lived in the Midway. I studied at Hamlin many years ago, and but lived in the Midway for about 15 years. Minnehaha and Fairview was my stomping ground over there, and I really love the area. It's great to see the energy that's going on over there. I love the fact that Allianz is, really wants to continue to be a partner in good things happening in the Midway, and look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. And I'm here if anyone has any questions that I might be able to help with. Thank you.
Speaking of technical difficulties, I had to unmute myself and actually find the mute button first. So thank you, Josh, for that. And I know a lot of you are familiar with the name Allianz, as it's on our beautiful soccer stadium, and hopefully we'll be able to all be there in person for games pretty soon. So for our legislative panel, we have 5 legislators who have RSVP'd. And so far, I only see 2 of them on. I know their schedules are pretty tight. Hopefully at some point we'll be seeing Senator Sandy Pappas and Representative John Thompson and Representative Mohammed Noor. If they are on, I encourage them to unmute themselves and let me know, but I don't see them yet. But we also do have Representative Alice Hoffman and Senator John Hoffman. At this point, we're going to have a lot of questions today, and I also encourage people, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can. We also have a lot of questions already ready to go. But first, I would like our members to introduce themselves and just quickly let us know when they first got elected, a little bit about their district boundaries, what committees they serve on, and then what their priorities are for a session. And we'll go alphabetical. So Representative Hausman, can you begin? And you're on mute.
I should know that by now. I used to represent the entire Midway area, and at each redistricting, I've lost more of it. Now I lost everything south of Como, so I represent a little bit of St. Anthony Park, a little bit of Como Park, and then 3 suburban cities, Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, and most of Roseville. I chair the housing committee, so that is where I spend most of my time. And of course, as you know, our housing crisis has only grown worse at the time in this time of the pandemic. So I spend most of my time there. I also serve on the transportation committee, and so have spent a lot of time trying to build a more robust public transit system. And now I'm working on a second train to Chicago, which St. Paul has an interest in, and I think the business community has been supportive of as well. More than that, or wait for talking about budget and other things after
We will
introductions?
talk about budget. That is one of the
Okay.
questions, so
Okay.
that's fine. Thank you. Senator Hoffman.
Hello, esteemed Midway Chamber members. I miss you guys. I do. I represent Senate District 36, which is Champlin, Coon Rapids, and Brooklyn Park. Have been part of the Midway for many, many years. Having my day job is deeply embedded in the Midway. This is a weird year, you guys, and I was much to the surprise of what happened last year, even trying to negotiate this year. So Alice, I'm so excited to hear about how you guys figured it out in the House later on, if we're talking about how to get bills across, how to get authors, how to get people signed up, how to vote, et cetera, like that. But as you know, I was elected in 2012, and hanging in my office right above my head is this picture of this person who is mowing the grass in front of the Capitol. It was a black and white framed photo that I believe the counselor, Mike Zipko, Jeff Fensky, Dan Leggett, all Jameson, they all had some kind of ploy into getting that picture framed and given to me at a board meeting years ago. And I'll never forget, everybody said it was going to be a part-time job, right? Well, Ted Davis, Mike Zipko, Chris Ferguson, you guys all lied to me. This is not a part-time job. This is more than a full-time job. And that's okay. But it is. I was reelected in 2016 and then again reelected in 2020. And I serve as the ranking member of Health Human Services Reform Committee, which is both the policy and the finance, and serve on aging. Then I serve on the Governor's Workforce Development Council, as well as the school trust. It's an educational process. There's a trust of money that goes into the pot since 1858 that's supposed to go to schools. It's school trust lands, and I serve on that committee, have since 2012. So good to be here. And also, I think Carrie Dietzick, Senator Dietzick, was going to try to get into as well, Chad. I think she had said she's got the same thing Sandy Pappas has. They have their multiple juggling. So I'll be on the lookout if they pop in too, but I'm excited to be here, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And also I see that one of our new state representatives, State Representative John Thompson, is now on the call. Representative Thompson, the first question we just have is to have all of our members introduce themselves and let us know when you first got elected, a little bit about your district boundaries, what committees you serve on, and just quickly some of your top priorities for this session.
I'm Representative John Thompson. I represent District 67A, which covers the east side of St. Paul, particularly Payne-Phalen area, a little bit of Dayton's Bluff, small portion. I kind of overlap a little bit of Jay Zhang's district. White Bear, Arcade Avenue, in that district there. You said, why did I run?
I didn't ask that, but if you would like to quickly say that, you can. And then also what committees you're on.
What committees?
Thank you. I am on the Education Finance Committee, Higher Ed Finance Committee, Behavioral Health and Human Services, and also the Agricultural Finance Committee. And the reason I ran was to actually be exactly what I want to see in legislation. I want to be the change that I want to see in legislation. It's not too many faces as I look on this screen that look like myself. It's not too many faces that look like myself in legislation. A lot of times there are decisions made for my community without my community at the table. And so they say if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. I'm definitely tired of being on the menu. in my community also. I want to be a strong voice for those who have felt like they haven't had a voice for a long time. Like I was a machinist for 11 years. I did machinist work. I made a decent living. This job doesn't pay a lot of money, but I've never been more passionate about anything that I've ever done in my life. I'm looking forward to learning from veterans like Representative Alice Hausman, just being John Hoffman, just people that are here have done it, but also noticing that the people actually really need us now more than ever. They need us. They voted for us because they need us now. Our communities, each and every one of our communities are going to be in a pandemic after the epidemic is, epidemic after the pandemic is over. So I just wanted to make sure that I be the voice and be exactly what I want to see and did. This is a lot of work, by the way, but here I am. I was built for this.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Thompson, and thanks for joining us today at your first Midway Chamber event. I hope we make you feel welcome. First question we're going to ask, and why don't we just go with the same order for right now? So starting with the Representative Hausman. Yesterday, Governor Walz announced his proposed 2-year, $52.4 billion budget. What do you like about it? What are your concerns? And how will small businesses be impacted?
And I'm going to set the context first, because maybe a year and a half ago, there was a forecast that suggested we were going to have a wonderful surplus. And of course, we already have a budget reserve of over $2 billion. So we were really well situated. And then the pandemic hit, and the forecast was redone, and it suddenly showed a staggering deficit. The good news is, in this budget year, every month we get an update about how much revenue has actually come in relative to the forecast. Every month, the actual revenue has been higher than the forecasted revenue. So we are doing a little better than some of the MMB, Minnesota Management and Budget people had predicted. In February, we'll get a new forecast. So the budget you saw yesterday that the governor came out with, he will redo that at the end of February once that new forecast comes out. So this is still based on the old forecast that showed that we were going to have a deficit. You already see we're the only divided legislature in the country, so our job is going to be harder to reach some agreement. My sense is, though the governor has proposed tax increases, I'm going to jump ahead to the end and say there will not be tax increases because the Senate will not agree to that. I just think that that's a given, because there's nothing they need. The issue of the impact on business, I think, depends so much on what Washington does to help businesses get through this difficult time. You know what they did in that first CARES Act. Now there's a new one coming to us that really has some pretty good news for Minnesota. The federal government, I think, sees themselves, we can't deficit spend, but they can. And so they're in a position to help out. So they have focused on business relief, I think. And we have certainly done some of that as well. So end of February, we'll have a little better sense of what the governor's real budget is going to be. This is one based on the old forecast where we were short of revenue. So I'll stop there, and we can follow up more after John and.
Great, Senator Hoffman.
John and John, you got John and John, Alice. That's good. Yeah, what amazes me is that we were on this trend to see 22, 23 years be in a fiscal deficit of anywhere between 3.6 and $4 billion based on the May look at what the finances are. And when the last forecast came out, we were, surprised that there was a little surplus that occurred in that. But let me be very clear, it wasn't a surplus based upon some fiscal management. It was the the surplus in large part was because our federal Medicaid assistance programs, we did not spend as much as we should have spent. Therefore, we booked the savings. And that was a large amount of savings that went into the general fund. The way Minnesota does things, if it comes through some agency, it still goes to the general fund. Hence, this is my argument with there's $600,000 left from the Meadows settlement that Seamus O'Meara had done, which was a class action lawsuit that was for people with disabilities that were put in 5-point restraints. And I don't know if you guys remember, you ever hear about the Jensen Settlement Accord, but there's money that was left over, and the federal judge wrote the check to the Department of Human Services, and the Minnesota Management and Budget, they reached out and grabbed it. It's an actual, Alice, it was a physical check. It said Department of Human Services, right? But MMB grabs it because apparently DHS doesn't have a bank account or something. I don't know. But what was impressive is that this state fiscally responsibly put away money to a surplus, right? Now that surplus has been bought down because of our last round of business supports that we put out, and that should have gone out, and it actually is. The deed website had places where that people could go. Some money went to counties, some went directly to businesses, others went through another process where you applied for. But that our surplus now is at 1.6, Alice, 1.8 million or 1.8 billion, which is it's good, right? And coming to his budget proposal that he put out, I agree with Alice. There are not going to be any new taxes because she's right. This is the only divided government that we have in the United States, that it's the House is controlled by the Democrats and the Senate's controlled by the Republicans. And already the Republicans, as of yesterday, were telling agencies to just make sure they cut 5% off the top, right? So what that means for the area that I stay in this year, the lane, Health and Human Services, you're looking at a proposed cut of $800 million just off the top, right? And within the Health and Human Services, the Reform Committee, the budget proposal from the governor was 554 pages long. And so I am waiting for my book to show up so I can start to look through to see how they're going to leverage or not leverage the money that should be spent or not spent in Minnesota. And let me just clarify one thing. Minnesota has got a rich tradition and history of putting every dollar on the table. They put the feds match that dollar. So services to our elderly, services to our most vulnerable, it's a 1-for-1 match that people put in. So if our businesses are doing good and we're paying more in property taxes and we're paying more in income taxes, then the dollar that's put on the table for Medicaid gets matched by the feds. Minnesota is absolutely been ahead of the curve on that and has always been able to set aside political differences in order to care for that. Speaking of which, first time in history, you have 915,000 people 65 and older. You have 850,000 people in the K-12 education system. We have more people 65 and older than we do in our education system right now. And that's just going to get larger as the years come by. So I'll be reading for the next 3 days on this 550 pages I'm supposed to look through. So.
Thank you. And we'll get to Representative Thompson in a second. I just want to quickly welcome State Senator Sandy Pappas, who's now joined us. Senator Pappas, I'm going to have Representative Thompson answer this question first, but the question we're on right now is just reaction to the governor's proposed budget yesterday, what you like about it, what your concerns are about it, and what impact it has on small business. So Representative Thompson.
Hey Chad, I'm probably a little different than everybody else. 'Cause I'm a realist. I don't make things up. I don't sugarcoat the truth. I'm a realist. I live in a community where my next door neighbor is making $750 every 2 weeks, and her rent's $1,400 and $70-some a month, $1,473 a month. I don't even know where the $3 comes from. I'm a realist. Her husband is laid off. So he had to stay home and distance help with distance learning, and his kids are failing. I'm just a realist. So talking about the governor's budget, we have to figure it out, how to help my community. I live in a community where these small businesses weren't open. A lot of these businesses were shut down. They couldn't even, open due to COVID. And it's not the governor's fault, it's COVID's fault. I'm a realist, Chad. I don't know how to be anything else other than real. And so we need help. We need help, and we need to figure it out. People voted, and another thing is people voted for us. Right now, people voted for us on both sides of they are looking for us to help them, Republicans and Democrats. They are looking for us to help them out. Small businesses, farmers, our neighbors, they need help. And so, I'm ready to go to work. I'm excited, and I'm a freshman. Maybe that's the freshman jitters, but I've been at this for a few weeks now, so I don't consider myself a freshman either. By the way, but we need these people need help a lot. So the kids, my kids, like my kids. We can talk about the businesses. My kids who are on the honor roll. Every year they pretty much on the honor roll, failing, bringing home Fs. Distance learning, and so I'm a realist because I have a lot of problems within in my district, in my community. I know I represent the entire state of Minnesota, but where I live right now, it's really bad. And I'm talking about for businesses, homeowners, renters, landlords. Like, it's bad. And so, we look at that. I'm like Senator Hoffman. I haven't gotten this huge book yet, but I want to go through this book with a fine-tooth comb and find out how I can find resources and money for the businesses in my community, the homeowners, the landlords. Like, I'm ready to go to work, and it doesn't have anything to do with either side. The Republicans are like, we need to come together and help our communities wrap our arms around them. I'll tell you this, in our move. We watched Minnesota. We are the only divided legislature in the United States. Also, we just watched George Floyd. I don't know if people understand this, but George Floyd urinated on himself right on the side of that police car. Urine is embarrassing. The world is watching us also to see what we're going to do. And I want to make sure that I bring a real conversation to this conversation. The world is watching us. They're watching this body, this legislative body, to see what we're going to do. I want us to come together and make sure that we pass legislation that makes sense for our businesses, for our families, and for our education system. And the mental health of some of these people in my community is at an all-time low. Trauma. So I understand this is a call about the Chamber of Commerce and businesses, things like that. But I want to make sure that people know I'm a realist. I'm not. I could be a politician at the state capitol. And on this call, I'm gonna be 100% real and say that the people need us. They need us to wrap our arms around them and fix this together, Republicans and Democrats. So, and I'll pass. Thank you.
Once again, I started talking with the mute button on. Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thanks, Chad. Sorry I was a little late. I'm triple booked and then I didn't have the right link. So that's what happens these days with technology. But I'm happy to be here with you again. The governor's budget just came out yesterday. So, I think if you told me we were going to talk about it, or if I realized you probably wanted to talk about it, I would have printed some of it out or reviewed some of it. But I can tell you what I do know. First of all, I think taxing the top 1% of people is perfectly reasonable. There have been a lot of people who have not done poorly under COVID. Mostly people at the lower income have suffered the most, like in the hospitality business in particular with COVID because of closings. And so to have those who have done fine, done well with the stock market, to have them help support their neighbors, I think is totally reasonable. They're fellow Minnesotans. I did talk to someone from the governor's office yesterday morning about his proposal for using redevelopment bonds, appropriation bonds to help rebuild Minneapolis and St. Paul. the damage caused during the civil unrest by many times outside agitators and people, you know, criminal elements that just decided to take advantage of the peaceful demonstrations and burn buildings and loot, etc. And that's $150 million. But I'm not real hopeful that that's going to happen in the Senate, and hopefully the House will be stronger on this position of helping small businesses. I mean, this is not even this is not money to rebuild the fourth precinct and was it fourth precinct in Minneapolis. This is small businesses and they need it. I mean, for sure. And a lot of our businesses on University Avenue were damaged during that period. But yet when you see what happened yesterday in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where there was a proposal to not allow disaster relief to be used to help Minneapolis and St. Paul. Now, we don't do that to rural Minnesota. If they have a disaster, if they have something that is out of their control, floods, fires, whatever, we're there to help them. And, you know, most of the money going to rural Minnesota does come from the metro area, largely from Hennepin County. And so it's very mean-spirited of them to say, now, when we needed, when we had something that was beyond our control, I mean, you can argue as much as you want about whether the National Guard should have been called out earlier. But when we saw what happened in our own US Capitol, that they didn't have enough security there against a riotous crowd, then, you know, how can our mayors be blamed for doing their best, but not anticipating that it was going to get so out of control? So that's good for the governor. I'm happy he did that. Representative Hausman, who's on the call, will be largely responsible for that in the House. I did see that the governor also put in some money for housing, again, appropriation bonds, which I think helps all of us if our residents have access to more affordable housing. And I'm also a big proponent of more home ownership because I think that's the way people can pass on wealth and build wealth in their community. And we destroyed a lot of that wealth building when we built the freeway and destroyed the Rondo neighborhood. So I think, you know, helping more families of color get into home ownership, I think is really important. And, you know, off the top of my head, I just can't even remember what else is in the governor's bill. Like I said, he just released it yesterday, and I'm focusing on my committees, which capital investment will be one of them, and judiciary. So criminal justice reform is a big concern of mine. And then I'm also on the pension commission, which should be pretty quiet this year. Although I have to say there is one proposal, I think I'm probably talking too long, but because I'm not sure how long I can be with you, I've got to get all my points in, is I've been working for a number of years on a pension plan for low wage workers. So if business is not able to offer a pension plan, but would like to, this is a way that you can help your workforce start savings for retirement. And a lot of our low wage workers just don't, even moderate wage workers, just don't save enough for retirement. And we know Social Security is not going to be enough for them in retirement. They've got to have some personal savings. They've got to have, if they don't have a defined benefit plan, they have to have a defined contribution plan, like an IRA, to help save for retirement. So this would be like a quasi-state run contract with a private entity to have workers that can auto enroll into a pension plan. And it's been done in other states, and it's done in a way to make it as easy as possible for businesses so their employees can be part of it. So I'd be interested at some point as the proposal is introduced and we have hearings, and talking to you more about it. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Senator. I do want us to move on because we have a lot of questions, but a quick follow-up specifically to Representative Hausman in the chat. Somebody is saying, are you surprised there was no transportation financing in the budget? As a matter of fact, a bit reduction of the general fund, which goes to transportation, 180 from 2 years ago when 20-cent gas tax was proposed.
So when the governor presented his bill, he made very clear that he was giving the new money to those most hurt by the pandemic. And I mean, that's how he framed it. And so I think he would argue that transportation was not hurt in the last year. In fact, they made out enormously in that bonding bill that was passed in October. We did more for transportation in that bonding bill than we have ever done, in a way that I don't support. There were tons of earmarks. Everybody got their local road written in, which is, I think, a very, very bad direction to go, and it politicizes it. That's my sense of it, that he was very specific. This budget is for those most damaged by the pandemic.
Thank you. Okay. So
There was
the next
one other quick
question-
one. There's one other quick one that I can answer too, whether Representative Winkler was going to try again for his legalization of marijuana bill. He has introduced it again. No one expects it to move because the same senators who opposed it in the past are still there. And so it won't be moving. The interesting thing is there's huge public support for it. You know that in every state where it was on the ballot, it passed. So there's huge public support. The questioner pointed out that the imprisonment falls more heavily on people of color, and particularly Black men, I think. So there's a racial inequity, and that affects them the rest of their lives. It affects their ability to get a home in the future. So those are just a couple of comments about that question.
Jed, can I just give you one nuance on the transportation piece?
Yes.
Go ahead, Chris.
So I think the other part of it is that at least the transit system did get significant money in the last CARES Act and the first CARES Act. So as Senator Hausman said, Representative Hausman, it is the governor was prioritizing areas that needed the funding and did not get sufficient funding under the CARES Act. So he was really looking at the money that was coming in from the federal government, allocating that, and then making the budget decisions based on where the gaps remain. So
I was surprised that both transit and passenger rail, Amtrak particularly, were both helped significantly with the federal bill.
Yeah.
Great. Next question. Currently, PPP loans would be taxable in Minnesota, but the federal stimulus bill passed in December states forgivable loans are not considered taxable income. Do you support eliminating the tax on forgivable PPP loans, and do you expect any decision to come before April 15th? And Senator Pappas, since you're the one that's the shortest on time, I'll lead with you this time.
Oh, shoot. I was answering a question in the chat. Sorry, what was the question?
Currently, PPP loans would be taxable in Minnesota, but the federal stimulus bill passed in December states that forgivable loans are not considered taxable income. Do you support eliminating the tax on forgivable PPP loans, and do you expect any decisions to come before April 15th?
Well, this issue just came up, and I don't serve in the tax committee, so I haven't really thought about it enough to have an opinion. I think that in the best of all worlds, it's a good idea to be consistent with federal law and not complicate our tax system. But given the fact we have a projected, well, you know what? A loan is not really an income. A loan is a loan. You said forgivable. Okay, all right. Let me think about it. I think I'd have to look and see what the impact is on the budget. So after we get the forecast in February and we know how much money we're going to have, because it's, obviously businesses are suffering. We don't want to make it worse for them. So I'm inclined to support it, but I just have to have full information before I make a final decision.
Senator Hoffman, are you on the tax committee in the Senate?
No, I'm not. Murphy is, and that's why Erin was going to try to be on here today too, but they're actually meeting right now. I know she wanted to come. I know Carla Nelson is either has produced a bill or is in the process of producing that bill to alleviate that section and wants to move fast on it. So that's what I know over in the Senate. Sandy's shaking her head yes. So that's all I know on that one, Alice. But I think you got global support. You got global support over here in the Senate on that one clearly, and that was, I know the counselor asked that question in the chat too. So
yeah, so Tom Bach is the chief author. Carla Nelson is one of the co-authors for it. It was at the tax hearing yesterday. It doesn't have companion text yet in the House. Obviously, a lot of small businesses are on this meeting right now, and so it's a big issue for them. So any other comments from anyone on this particular one?
I do think there would be bipartisan support. Everybody is very conscious of trying to help those who are struggling, and that includes business.
And with the tax deadline in April for many, would there be something passed before that?
Well, there's the dilemma with our timetable, because we all wait until that February forecast at the end of February before we even start writing our budgets. And so they're just practical deadlines that probably
It would have to
work.
be, it would have to be fast tracked and probably be a standalone bill, and not wait for the full comprehensive tax bill, because that wouldn't come until May.
Yeah,
Right.
that
might not
that's-
be.
that proposed budget piece too, and mid-March is where the supplemental budget is due too. So Sandy and Alice are right. They would have to fast track that, and it would be, more on the House then, because I believe it's going to get fast tracked over here. Sandy, isn't that what you're seeing? Yeah. So,
My guess would be, yeah, it'll be fast tracked. If the tax chair is doing it.
yeah.
Well, wait a minute, Bach's not the tax chair. Sorry.
No. He
Carly
was
knows.
when you were in the majority, Madam President. He was the tax chair before.
One time he was.
All right. Well, another question from the chat. Do you know if there will be legislation planned this year that is aimed toward environmental concerns, such as statewide ban of straws, styrofoam containers, plastic bags, etc.?
I do not believe there will be any bill introduced for a statewide ban of those items. That seems to be something that more often happens on a local level. A city might decide to do that, so I would not expect that. There will be other environmental issues that, again, will divide us. One of those would be some of the northern Minnesota polymet and others that the environmental community worries threaten the water. And there are certainly those bills that will be traveling. By the way, just to show you, even when you think you have a non-controversial thing that's received total agreement between the House and the Senate, legislative strategy of the minority in the House anyway has been the following. So Jamie Becker Finn had a bill, we were going to fast track it. It passed unanimously in the Senate, unanimously. And it was that during this pandemic, for the short time that you could apply online for a marriage license, you could, and so that you could facilitate some of these problems. Agreement in both houses, passed unanimously in the Senate. And then the House Republicans said, but we'll only accept that if you also say that they can apply for a gun permit online. And then, of course, everything stops. That's the nature when you have a divided legislature. When I tried to get the 100 million housing assistance for renters and landlords last year, they wouldn't even talk about that unless they said, well, first the governor has to give up his emergency powers. And then that sort of ends the conversation. So that's the dilemma with dealing with a divided legislature.
Mm-hmm. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that one? Okay.
Absolutely agree. Alice is right on. You got to divide a legislature. If somebody personalizes something and they throw a line in the sand, our business background, there's no best alternative to any negotiated agreement. It's like, all right, now you got to start all over again.
Yeah.
It's a bad habit that the legislature has gotten into. We call it linkage. That everything gets linked to something else. Like we can't just pass something pure, like on its own merits and let it rise or fall. If it's a good idea or a bad idea, like this marriage license thing, it has to all be linked to something else that I have to get for my, my party or my group, or, I'm trying to get my issues passed by linking it together. So I think it's very bad government, really.
It's a bad habit, and interestingly, both parties have done it.
Yeah.
It's an intentional leadership decision that leadership keeps everything till the end, and then they trade everything against everything else. So it gives them more leverage in the negotiation.
It started with the leadership doing that, and now it's, as Alice pointed out, it's working its way down now to members of the body trying to always link something.
And
they want.
it's amazing you two bring that up, because John, when I was a freshman, I thought, all right, we're in the majority, both in the House and in the Senate. And for some reason, it was that wait till the last minute. And then it was like, do you remember how tired I was? Folks in the chamber know. I mean, there was like 4 days in a row with no sleep because of everything that was moving so fast around the Capitol. And then it's like, why does this happen? And Dick Cohen said, well, it happens every year, John. It's just been part of the whole thing. And I'm glad you two brought that up. So John Thompson, welcome to the freshman class. You're going to see that. You're going to shake your head and you're going to go, how can we change this? And then you know what? You got to get a whole bunch of other people to agree with you on that one.
I think Melissa Hortman and Paul Gazelka have both said, no, we need to do conference committees. We need to have a process, and then it doesn't happen.
So can anything be done about linkage? Can we change that?
Yeah, the single subject. If you go back to the single subject, that Jack Davies, who was a Hamlin law professor, and there's a few lawyers in this room that know who I'm talking about, right? Hasn't he for years, Alice, said that? If you just go to a single subject and be done with it?
I think John Marty has a bill on that, because last year he was the one who spoke out most aggressively about this. Single subject, he would claim, is constitutional. Doing it,
Right.
Doing things like we did last year, where we put the tax bill into the bonding bill.
That was the worst.
That's when Senator Marty wrote the letter that says that's unconstitutional.
Mhm.
The Constitution spells out the single subject. What it says is you should be able to tell from the title of the bill what's in the bill, single subject. So we shouldn't really have to do anything anymore, because it's already very clearly spelled out. But
my thing would be kind of the rank and file has to rebel against it, because if one leader doesn't go along with it, like if Kurt Dowd doesn't go along with a good government approach, then it can fall apart and end up at the end. So it needs to be all the rank and file really needs to say, we don't want to govern like this.
Getting back to the governor's budget, a question in the chat from a nonprofit. There was very little language regarding supporting the nonprofit sector so we can continue to provide safety net services during the pandemic and through the recovery. Is there a place in the governor's budget where nonprofits will be supported? With a large number of nonprofits in the Midway Chamber, this is something we all care about.
Well, I could specifically speak to housing. All the nonprofits that we have partnered with, Lutheran Social Service, Catholic Charities, Common Bond, Beacon, Aon, all of those nonprofits that do just amazing work in the area of housing. Housing infrastructure bonds are a tool. It's a new tool that dates to, I think, 2012. General obligation bonds for public housing can't be used by nonprofits because GO bonds have to be publicly owned. And so we came up with this new tool. It allows us to partner with them. And so in the Midway area, for example, one of the projects that Beacon, which is a faith-based nonprofit, worked on with House of Hope Presbyterian was Prior Crossing, which is housing specifically for homeless young people. And so that has been, I think, in terms of the housing area where I work, where we have had a tool specifically that allows us. And when we partner with the nonprofits, they leverage $3 of private money for every $1 of state money we put in. So that has been a really productive partnership, I think, with the nonprofit world. And we have managed to build an amazing amount of housing along the way.
Great.
I would say that a good person to work through on the needs of nonprofits would be the Lieutenant Governor, because I think she comes out of the nonprofit world, as she was the executive director of the Children's Defense Fund. So I think she has an understanding of that world. And I would suggest that you try to set up a meeting with her and tell her about what some of your needs are and what could be done through the executive office.
And Mary from it's Keystone. Mary's from Keystone, which has been part of our area, and we have the largest amount of nonprofits per capita anywhere in the United States. I still think that's true. We just have to become, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's what I've been finding with Sandy shaking her head on that one. And in this case, how can we leverage our relationships we have in the community, Mary, in order to make sure that he's not forgetting about us, right? Absolutely. I agree with you on that.
Great. Another question. The Midway area has been fortunate to serve as home to one of the most vibrant craft brewing scenes across the state. But given the ongoing economic crisis and continued burden these small entrepreneurial businesses are struggling with, is there any opportunity to provide some critical relief to the small craft brewers? So for example, last year, the legislature made it possible for restaurants to sell cans of beer or bottles of wine with takeout, but small brewers continue to be denied the right to sell their own products in 12 or 16-ounce containers that customers overwhelmingly want. Any potential for some change at the Capitol?
So there was a bill last year that had broad support. And here's the dilemma with anything relating to the liquor industry. The lobbying behind the scenes is powerful. And in that case, Jamie Becker-Finn was the one. There's one in Roseville that in our district that strongly was organizing around it. It's kind of like the year that we finally changed a little bit for Surly. They did such an effective job of lobbying it that people who never voted for liquor bills voted for the liquor bill that year because of the lobbying that Surly customers had done. But the behind the scenes opposition from the lobbying sector is what keeps it from passing.
I think we have majority vote in the Senate to for some liquor flexibility. We had a vote in December on an amendment I offered that got 32 votes. And there were a significant number of people who would have voted yes, but there were kind of structural reasons why they voted no. They had to stick with the Republican leadership, or Susan Kent's case, she'd promised not to vote for any amendments, that really want to vote with the craft breweries. I've been very involved over many years. In fact, I'm going up to Castle Danger this weekend for a meeting. It'll be my first time leaving the cities. So I think I went to a state park last summer, one or two. Anyway, we have a variety of barriers. Majority Leader Gazelka is against any change. The chairs in both the House and the Senate, Zach Stevenson and Gary Dames, don't want to make any changes in the liquor laws. Gary Dames is just anti-liquor, period. He doesn't want to do anything to do with liquor at all.
And Zach would be the Teamsters?
I don't know what Zach's issue is. I don't know. He just was pretty hostile when I was on a meeting with him about doing some changes in December. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought now. So yes, the Teamsters are also a problem. They see it as threatened. Their wholesale operation feels threatened. It's really, I argue with them. I'm pro small business, pro labor, and pro competition. You know, I mean, this competition with craft breweries and some of the traditional brands, or the way we've done liquor in the past, it's not productive. I mean, we have 170 craft breweries now, or brew pubs, or microbreweries in the state, in spite of our very restrictive liquor laws. And they're in a position to grow if we allow them. But we, restrict the amount they can produce and still sell growlers. We don't allow flexibility in packaging. Our tax laws are not supportive enough. There's just lots and lots of problems with this three-tiered system that we have. And I don't think that liquor stores will suffer or are suffering. Liquor stores are doing very, very well in spite of Sunday sales. They're doing very, very well because people aren't going to restaurants or drinking at home or bars. And I think that's going to continue probably into the near future until we get a handle on this virus. So I feel bad for all these craft breweries. I think they're doing an amazing job, and they add a lot of ambiance to our neighborhoods. And, the more the merrier. People really enjoy them, especially millennials, but a lot of us old folks, even if we don't drink beer, we still like the idea of being able to hang out at a craft brewery.
And they've added economic vitality to the very neighborhoods in the cities, right, in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Duluth. that need economic vitality.
Right.
So that's the other reason I
Some
think
old
we've been
neighborhoods
supportive.
like the Northern Loop in Minneapolis, the warehouse areas. They've just kind of taken over that area. It's
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
You can see why there's so much, anybody that wants to open that liquor statute, right, is just going to get into that. Sandy and Al, you did a good job of explaining just it's a moving target. And, you know, yeah, Kevin Filter, I think dual citizen, it's a small little brewery, these mom and pop shops, right? They're not
Right.
like Surly. They're not like the big giant ones that want to be bigger, right? But there's just so much mess going in there, Chad. And I don't know how you get that. And it's sad, Sandy, to hear that Zach's a no, because I think there's a
If you
win-win.
support it, you should talk to him.
Well, I do have that, and Emmett Coleman's on this call too. I mean, we're trying to bring some education on those smaller ones that are in our backyard here in the Midway, right? And I see that as a different argument than the Surleys and the Summits of the world, right? That's a whole, to me.
Well,
but
the bigger ones still want to just go over the 20,000 barrels and still sell growlers. The small ones, they have this, you know, this packaging issue where their customers just want to take home a 6-pack, and that local liquor store may not be carrying their brand.
Yeah, then you also have
teachers aren't delivering it to the
right.
liquor.
And they never will. I mean, they're not at that level, so we got to.
Yeah, they'll do it at a certain level, but you're right. For the small ones, it's not worth their while.
And the same thing with you have a distillery just down the street in I believe it's Alice. It's your Senate district. Come on, you guys, you just did a thing
Studio
there.
Distilling.
Thank you. And they're the 375 versus 750. You know,
Right,
so,
they're looking at some changes too. Right.
yeah. So
And cider. There's also an interest in hard cider.
Well, we
I
have
sound like
just
I'm a
few-
real lush, but actually I've become more of a lightweight. I used to like single malt scotch, but now I'm kind of a little wine or a little,
I don't.
that's about it.
I loved my single malt. I don't drink anymore, Sandy, and it's like, okay, I don't care. It's like.
Well, we have a
I
few
was
minutes
I was
left.
in Scotland a year ago. It was really fun.
We want to get to a few more questions, so hopefully we can get some that are answered relatively
Oh,
quickly.
shoot, I'm supposed to be on another call. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to leave.
Okay, well,
Bye.
thank you so much for joining us.
It's fun being with you all.
You too. Any chance the state will adopt the federal qualified business income deduction for small businesses? Given COVID, this is long overdue, says Dan Leggett.
Well, we usually have been supportive of having our tax code match the federal. You don't have any tax experts among the legislators here today, but we've usually been fairly responsive to making certain that our tax codes are compatible with the federal government. So I think there would be openness to that.
Okay. Another question, with so many Minnesotans working from home or doing distance learning, do you support utilization of federal COVID relief dollars to provide assistance to low-income households to cover internet services, necessary devices, and digital literacy? And how can the state supplement those federal funds and coordinate with federal programs to ensure funds are prioritized for these purposes?
So we, when we did our housing assistance fund last year, internet was one of those. We added in as much as we could. We said, for example, utilities. I would have to check whether we decided that the internet qualified as a utility. I know we had discussion about that, and I don't know if that was ever resolved. But our housing assistance, any housing cost, we made eligible for the housing assistance that we provided and that the federal government was providing.
And I think there was a couple $100 million set aside for school districts specifically to use in some of this technology stuff as well, Alice. And I don't know what the language in there, if it gave that kind of flexibility, but it would make sense to me to do that.
And that would be in the Federal CARES Act?
Yeah, it was I think that was direct flow through to the states on that Federal CARES Act where I thought it was $200 million. I can double check that, Alice, but there was money set aside for the school districts that were supposed to be utilized for some of that technology as stated.
So there's one regrettable thing in the Federal CARES Act, this new money that's coming to us. And that is when we did our housing assistance, we specifically said we didn't call it rental assistance, we called it housing assistance because we wanted it to help both renters and homeowners. As someone mentioned earlier, when you own the home, that's how you build wealth. And that also there's a racial equity gap there. So unfortunately, this new money coming to us from the federal government, quite a lot, hundreds of millions, they do it only for renters. And so we're very concerned about the forbearance around homeowners. So I am hoping we might still put some pressure on our federal representatives to see if they can broaden that so that we can also assist homeowners who are in financial difficulty.
Yeah, I wanted to just
Oh,
to
go ahead.
also talk about the importance of helping again. These youth are our future. So when you talked about access to internet, so like my kids, well, full disclosure, were on the honor roll, and then they all started failing right here on my couch. So I had to find outside resources. I had to find community-based and culturally specific community-based organizations to help. I think the lady name was Tania or something like that. But I found her and I didn't know where she was. Jackie Turner over at St. Paul Public Schools gave it to me. But she tutored my kids. And I have to get into this, but she tutored my kids, and my kids are on the honor roll now again. But just this learning and not having access is real, especially in the Hmong community, Somali community, in our communities. This not having access is real, and they miss their teachers. And so any money that comes in that will help soften the blow. And another thing that's going to happen is that these moratoriums will get lifted. These moratoriums on evictions, these moratoriums will get lifted. Schools will open back up, and we'll flood all these problems into our courts, into our public schools, and ask them to soften the blow. We're going to need some community-based organizations. There's a few of them I can name. I think it's the 8 to 18 Truth Center over in Selby and Lexington, and what was the other one? Tony Sanea and the Sanea Foundation over in the Conway area. These are community-based East Side Athletics. These are community-based organizations that actually will help soften the blow. So we're going to have to support those organizations also. We're going to flood our communities with a lot of trauma, a lot of problems. I know once this eviction moratorium is lifted, like we're going to need mediators in these eviction courts. And I hate to go on a tangent, but I just know there's a lot of problems that are going to happen. And like I said earlier, my community is going to be in the epidemic after the pandemic. I have to go to a education committee hearing, so I have to leave. But thank you guys for having me.
Thank you. We are time to wrap up. So thank you for the representatives and senators who joined us today. Tony Mendoza in the chat did mention that his firm issued a report detailing where federal CARES Act funds for broadband, distance learning, and telemedicine were distributed in Minnesota. So if you find that helpful, the link is in the chat. Some of you are going to be joining us tomorrow for our book club, The Leader's Journey by Dr. Artika Tyner, a former board member. Jameson's holding his copy up there too. Even if you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to check it out and you can learn a little bit and maybe get the book later on. This is recorded, so we will be able to send this out to everybody. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you again
Looks
soon.
like Senator Hoffman has one final point.
Yes.
I just wanted to, Alice, the Minnesota received 180 million under the COVID-19 resources for schools. And in there was a governor's emergency education relief fund of 43 million, which is the prioritized technology for K-12
Wonderful.
students. So I don't know what they did with that. So that's all I wanted to get across, Chad.
Right. Thank you, everybody, and have a good
Thanks,
day.
everybody.